What do you think of a boring car salesman dad who fears technology and spends his days doing nothing but changing diapers? Don't let that harmless exterior fool you, because in reality, he is Sean, the most dangerous assassin the government has ever trained. Just because of a selfie accidentally posted online, his bloody past returns to hunt him down. And so, a healing family trip suddenly turns into a life-and-death race where the dad must drive, hold the baby, and casually send an entire squad of assassins to the afterlife without his wife and children ever finding out. The story begins with Dan, a man successful as a car salesman thanks to his sharp observation skills, who once again won the Salesman of the Month award. He relishes his quiet, tranquil, unassuming existence and anticipates commemorating his anniversary through a unique trip with his spouse, Jessica. This pair has 3 offspring, Nina, Kyle, and the baby of the family, Max. Nina and Kyle often clash, creating tension within the home. Dan is especially annoyed by Kyle playing video games constantly, pushing him to go outdoors, whereas Nina wanting to change university tracks because of her partner adds to his worries. Although Dan tries to offer direction, his advice is completely ignored. Kyle slyly keeps a hidden broadcasting rig at a buddy's place to keep playing without interruption, while Nina, claiming her autonomy, sees herself as a grown-up above her dad's counsel. As the folks are thrilled about their yearly custom of visiting a fair, Jessica discovers she is yearning for extra thrills and impulsiveness outside their standard habits. Following a fun roller coaster experience, Dan vows to inject more surprise into their upcoming adventures. Suddenly, their intimate second is broken when a stranger intentionally takes a picture of them smooching. This intrusion grows worse as the person mocks Dan, uploading the shot to the web and challenging him on his reaction. Things get nastier when the guy dumps his frozen drink on Dan and insults Jessica's appearance. Even with the goading and rudeness, Dan leaves the scene. He detests brutality, and Jessica claims she didn't wish for Dan to brawl with the men, yet she is secretly let down by her spouse. Back at the house, he feels like he must restrain himself, as the clash stays in his thoughts. Jessica discovers a release through boxing, where accidentally hitting a sparring partner leads to an unexpected relationship over smoothies. Confiding in her fresh acquaintance, Gwen, who works as a travel planner, Jessica reveals her feelings of being stuck. She values Dan as a partner and dad, but is irritated by his satisfaction with their current existence. During a shopping trip with Max, Dan notices a shady figure appearing to observe him. Behaving carefully, Dan responds immediately once the guy attempts a strike.
Really?
Despite having Max alongside him, Dan expertly succeeds in blocking the assailant's strikes, subduing him effortlessly. The bystanders are shocked, and even his peers detect a change in Dan. In his house, Dan reveals a hidden stash holding firearms, expired travel docs, and money. Worried, Dan calls Augie, an ex-colleague, to set up fresh personas for his kin, signaling they are at risk. Augie guesses the danger originates from Dan's previous employer, McCaffrey, and suggests Dan vanish immediately. It appears Dan is a retired hitman, a fact he hid from his relatives. It is probable McCaffrey found him due to the photo from the fairground. Dan looks for Nina at a journalism gathering, just to learn she resigned 3 months back. Following a tiny bribe, her pal gives her up. He locates Nina beneath the stands, sad that she gave up her ambition, yet there is no moment to focus on that since they must pick up her sibling from the chess group. Yet, Dan is let down to find him at a neighbor's place, along with his video game rig. Being careful, Dan informs his children they are heading to Vegas. During Jessica's workday, Dan convinces her to embark on the impulsive vacation she really wanted. Notwithstanding her initial doubts, she gets thrilled to depart. However, as they prepare to exit the garage, McCaffrey's guys are already there. When a bus drives by, Dan expertly dodges the chasers. Shortly after, they reach Dan, yet he continues to steer clear while his clan suspects nothing. It is quite difficult to escape if you are being followed via satellite. Dan pulls into his job site and shuts the doors on the hunters. He proceeds to hoist the vehicle and locates the beacon. He takes cover right before the chasers overlook him and his auto. The relatives remain clueless. Dan attaches the device to a co-worker's auto and instructs him to drive that vehicle on the freeway. The hunters fall for the trick. Having 33 hours left, his spouse and children are blogging and sharing regarding their journey. To stay hidden, Dan grabs everybody's mobiles, making it a tech-less vacation. The sole issue is that they are unsure of the route to arrive there. Inside a tour office, following another small bribe, the employee locates charts for their drive. The household is genuinely connecting for the first instance in ages. Concurrently, McCaffrey personally inspects Dan's home, and is convinced his kin remains oblivious. Someone will make a mistake eventually. Simultaneously, while chatting with his sibling, an outsider identifies Kyle from his gaming fame and requests a photo. Dan observes Kyle and the female snapping photos and realizes McCaffrey will be chasing him shortly, so he resolves to keep motoring to escape detection. McCaffrey recruited extra guys to hunt Dan, and he spots 3 of them quickly. His clan is napping, so he plays tunes on every headset, whilst getting ready to employ deadly tactics. His side glass is hit, yet he succeeds in eliminating one, narrowly succeeding in dodging a collision and ramming one of the foes. His kin remains sleeping. Frankly, his household contains some of the deepest sleepers I have ever witnessed. The third fellow is sent airborne. Following an all-night drive, Dan eventually rests his eyes, yet his group is up. Just near the university Nina desires to join, she negotiates a visit there. It is a stunning location filled with celebrations. Jessica actually demonstrates her drinking prowess, and even Nina thinks that is awesome. A huge reason Nina wished to visit the grounds is due to her partner, Trevor, going to that school. During a site walk, Dan notices a German guy on a mobile and guesses he could be an agent for McCaffrey. Yet, Dan understands his error when he is suddenly ambushed by another person. They begin to brawl inside the science room, and following a brief tussle, Dan knocks out the attacker. He meets his group soon after to continue traveling. However, Nina went to visit Trevor. She discovers him being unfaithful to her. She comes back weeping, and Dan shows her a fighting technique she practices on Trevor,
Stereotypical.
Smile.
helping her feel far superior and value her kin more. Once driving again, the group connects further, and while Nina steers, she appreciates Dan for constantly supporting her and considers reclaiming her writing role at college. Inside a tiny lodge, the adults finally relax a bit. Jessica adores the impulsive side of Dan. She senses that things have changed regarding him. Dan rings up Augie, who is traveling to bring the fresh papers to Dan and his household. The sole issue is that he has not informed them yet. He then quietly replaces the mobile he swiped and attempts to steel himself for the talk. Kyle meets him, and they eventually discuss his life as a broadcaster. It is an area he excels in, basically elite status. He wishes to demonstrate it during laser combat with Dan. They wager on the game. First to 3 hits wins. This ought to be easy for Dan, considering he is a former killer, so he scores the initial point and the next. Then Kyle fights back, scoring 2 points himself, yet Dan secures the final hit. Kyle feels hustled, yet the pair becomes tighter. Eventually reaching Las Vegas, they lodge in one of the best rooms in town, though first Dan needs to go below. He connects with Augie, who gives him the fresh documents and a single-direction plane ticket to Vancouver, for a large price naturally. Dan readies himself as he intends to reveal the reality to Jessica during a lovely meal. Whilst the siblings watch Max, Dan instructs them never to exit the room for any reason, though they likely won't obey. McCaffrey's guys already know Dan's spot. As a famous player, Kyle visits the HyperX game zone, gets spotted, and even gets to encounter Valkyrie. She actually allows him to enter her squad for the Valorant Championship, yet McCaffrey's henchmen are tracking them too. Meanwhile, Nina gets cozy with a player who ceded his seat to Kyle. Kyle is individually wrecking the opposition squad. Dan attempts to confess the facts to Jessica, yet gets cut off constantly and chooses to delay it slightly longer to gamble with her. However, after some time, he chooses to verify on the children, but his ring is ignored, so they go upstairs. Jessica is tricked by mannequins thinking they are napping, calming Dan's thoughts. Jessica proceeds to wash up and activates a loving atmosphere with tunes and scent. That is precisely the moment McCaffrey's troops attack. Dan tosses liquor and fires at it, lighting the attackers ablaze and defeating them. Yet Jessica is captured. Dan lowers his firearm but cunningly seizes a blade. Yet when the bad guy addresses Dan as Sean, a hurtful truth strikes Jessica. As the man is chatting, Dan defeats him too. Jessica dashes to the children, but discovers the decoys. She realizes they must search HyperX, because that is everything Kyle discussed. Frankly though, they ought to have utilized superior footage, since Kyle is terrible. Regardless, he concludes the match with 30 eliminations. Right when the round finishes, the folks show up to get them. Dan ultimately confesses he is a secret hitman, and his former partners are present to end him, yet the offspring do not believe it, until bullets fly. Hiding behind a vehicle, Dan shoots the woman, yet her armor saves her. Thus, they engage in a fast second bout. Dan at last admits his past as McCaffrey's soldier and that he has ended 42 lives. Kyle believes Dan is double-faced, and now they grasp why Dan refused to quit the town and opposes online platforms. He gives them fresh personas. Nina becomes Molly and Kyle becomes Van, similar to a truck. Following 18 years of deceit, The clan declines to acknowledge him. Jessica is quitting him and will assume charge of the children. She phones Gwen requesting aid, whilst Dan remains watching outdoors until dawn breaks. Although Dan attempts to clarify it isn't secure and McCaffrey will hunt them, Jessica simply orders him to fix it and keep his distance. When Jessica gets there, it appears Gwen is quite a strong lady, and I would not be shocked if she partners with McCaffrey. Abruptly, Gwen speaks of her former flame, who built a fresh existence with an annoying wife. Then she befriended the wife and waited for her to enter her snare. Yes, Jessica was duped. McCaffrey is present, totally surprising. McCaffrey rings Dan, revealing his kin is under his control. He sets a rendezvous at a deserted lodging. McCaffrey's goons are everywhere. Dan has to feel honored. Reaching the top floor, McCaffrey requests a mocking embrace. It is revealed he is Dan's dad. Seriously? McCaffrey wished Dan deceased since he left him. Yet over recent days, Dan destroyed every guy McCaffrey directed at him. His dad desires his return. How often does this turn happen? If Dan returns to serve him, he will release the family. If he says no, his kin perishes. Lacking another choice, Dan consents to the deal. Instantly, ethics arise in the children. They need Jessica to save Dan, even if they wish to sever bonds a moment prior. Kyle immaturely mashes the lift keys. And whilst the offspring attempt to convince their mom they cannot leave Dan, Jessica begins swapping Max's nappy and shoves it into the villain's mug, knocking him down to die. They plan to retrieve their father. As McCaffrey leaves to organize things, Gwen utilizes her charm to lure Dan back into adoring her, disregarding the IT fellow. She knows Dan's strategies. The household is present to save him. When he renders Gwen unconscious, the computer man is seized. Dan says sorry for hiding things from Jessica and vows to forever speak the facts. He desires to be her spouse and a caring dad. Meanwhile, McCaffrey detects something is off. Incidentally, the IT person is Kyle's admirer. Kyle tests the UAV and it appears Dan is actually skilled with tech. The goons are approaching. He orders his kin to head for the ceiling and he will handle them, Kyle serving as his vision. Kyle utilizes the flyer to locate McCaffrey's guys and sends data to Dan, who, regardless of the odds, expertly manages them. McCaffrey observes the machine helping Dan and rouses Gwen to locate the group. Dan asks his father to stop, yet he refuses to hear, and although 10 men fire machine guns, nobody succeeds in striking Dan. Seeing the lift rising, Jessica conceals the children and fires when the doors open, yet Gwen simply relaxes to the side. Gwen mocks Jessica, realizing she holds the upper hand in brawling, ignoring her threat level. With connections still working, Kyle states 9 men remain. Dan eliminates them individually, since why employ folks who aim correctly? At least McCaffrey feels pride. He eventually guns down the flyer. Concurrently, during the extended brawl, Gwen emerges as the winner, trapping Jessica beneath a heap of debris. McCaffrey strikes Dan down and possesses a clean aim at him, yet he must chatter regarding how frail family rendered him. In the meantime, Gwen traps the children, giving Jessica power to raise the wreckage, though she gets tossed about like a bag of dirt. Dan succeeds in removing rounds from McCaffrey's weapon, so they turn to physical fighting. Summoning her internal power, Jessica grabs a bamboo rod and attempts a sporty leap, yet misses badly. Gwen thinks it is funny and believes Jessica is attempting again. However, this round she tosses it, ending her life. McCaffrey beats Dan in the fist fight and retrieves the loaded firearm, prepared to ultimately finish it. However, the clan rushes in, Nina clarifying they do not despise him and stating that kin is the vital element of existence which involves him, her grandfather. That purchased sufficient moments for Dan to act. The household eventually gathers and the police are present to welcome them. Half a year on, Nina turned into a famous reporter. Dan currently manages a protection business to teach customers self-defense, even hiring Augie. Jessica is an instructor and Kyle continues broadcasting. The group gets ready for a huge voyage, packing a leased camper for a transcontinental drive intended to take Nina to Stanford. The movie ends, goodbye and see you again.